Hi guys, this is the advisor and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show the link between Jamaican politicians and bloodthirsty gunmen. Now, before I begin, I need to say this. I tried to get pictures of every single of these people that I'll be speaking of. But to be frank with you, no pictures exist. And no decent pictures which can be even shown exist of nearly all of the gunmen them from both political sides in the on the internet or anywhere you search. You cannot find anything. So for those without photographs, I'm asking you to, it's not by design that I left these out. It's because there is none to be had in any way, shape, or form. So forgive me for that. Now, also, I know that a lot of you have short attention spans. And because of that short attention spans, there are many of you who will not watch the video to the end. And therefore, while I wanted to do this video in this presentation in chronological order, showing from the 60s gunmen and the parties they were associated with, coming right down to 2023, I am going to have to do the most relevant one first, the one from say well in the past 10 years to 2023, and then I can go back and begin from the 50s, come down to now. Because the reason why I'm doing it that way is because what is happening now is affecting us now. And for those of you who may leave before the end of the video, you need to know what is going on now and why it is happening. That is very important. So I'm going to begin with the notorious gunmen and which party they are from and the connection between these murders and these politicians. Now, I know that some of you might have seen this video that I put out a few months ago. We said that this man is the most powerful gangster in Jamaica. Well, it still remains true, and I have to go to him first. This is Dr. Horace Chang, the Minister of National Security. Why? And I'm going to put a link to this particular video in the comment section. So I want you to look below and click on the link, and you can go to that video and watch it in its entirety. Because in this particular video, I'll be just scratching the surface of all both the comrades and labor rights and their gunmen. So I won't be getting to the details, but you can go back to this video and watch it as you go along. Anyway, Dr. Horace Chang. I had placed this particular graph in that video, and I wanted to take a look at it. And this is very important to what I'm saying. As you can see, the St. James Northwestern constituency between 1944 and 1997, that seat has been contested 13 times. 13 times between 1944 and 1997. Out of those 13 times, the JLP has won it 4 times. Each time the PNP get it, they take it for 3 consecutive terms. When the JLP takes it, it's only 1, and then 3 PNP, then 1 JLP, then 3 PNP, and so on. Now, as we notice, by 2002, this has changed. A lot of things had changed. Violence had stepped up in St. James Northwestern, well, all over St. James, but particularly in Northwestern St. James and surroundings. This is because at that time, there was this notorious gunman called Eldon Calvert who headed the Stone Crusher Gang. And the Stone Crusher Gang was aligned to the JLP. And not just aligned to the JLP, they were part of the covert political organization of Horace Chang. Now, the murders and the killing that happened in that place, I don't want to go into it too deeply, because if you watch the other video, you can see how it was done. But the area was softened up because of murders and everything, to the point where that seat eventually went to the JLP continuously from '02 for consecutive times. There's a link between those murders and those political killings at that time and the seat going to Horace Chang on 4 occasions. Now, after the death of Eldon Calvert, and hold on, it wasn't just Eldon Calvert and the Stonecrusher gang alone which was wreaking havoc, not only for themselves but for the party, but there were also another one called Delano Wilmot, known as Preke Boy, and he was being protected by intelligence from inside government. It was only when communication stopped between government and Preke Boy that the police was able to get him in, I think, 2002. But there you go. Now, to show the connection between them, I want to raise a specific point. The youngest member of the Stonecrusher gang, or what was the Stonecrusher gang at the time, he is now a quote-unquote respectable music producer. And I put music producer also in quote-unquote. He is known as Six Bass. Six Bass. Now, this Six Bass, which is a notorious murderer, he is the one who gave Andrew Holness the name Brogad. Now, what I'm saying, several music have been sung in praise of Brogad coming out of Six Bass's studio. And when Brogad got the name, when the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, got the name Brogad, he hugged it up and he loved it to this blessed day, even though he knows that it's coming from a notorious, mass murdering, bloodthirsty gunman with them called Six Bass. So you see the connection? Now, if you want to know more about how Horace Chang actually got this area to the point, this so perceived safe seat for the PNP, and now the JLP got it for 4 consecutive terms, you need to watch the other video. It goes into more details. But the thing is, how can a Minister of National Security, with more than a passing association with murderers, bloodthirsty murderers, be the National Security Minister? And if he's the National Security Minister, how would we expect that crime can ever stop? If they wanted to get rid of crime, the first thing they would do is to dissociate themselves from gunmen. And the man who is supposed to be protecting us, he is one of the main person who is associated with gunmen. How do we work that out? I want you to tell me in the comment section. But let me move on to the 1960s and come up back to now. Now, in the 1960s, going into the 70s, we had a series of gunmen who were associated with the PNP. They were Winston Blake, what them call Burry Boy, George Pence, known as Feathermap, and Aston Thompson, known as Bucky Marshall. Now, each of these men is responsible for dozens of murders on their own, and that they and with a group that they led. Now, these 3 men, here is what I mean. These men's name call upon so many murders, because I'll be going into a video and do each of these men and link them to connect them to each murder that they had done. But this video is not about that. Now, Bucky Marshall, Aston Thompson, why do you think he got the name Bucky Marshall? He got the name because he was a man who him don't carry no small gun. Him carry a pump action shotgun. And it is what we call in Jamaica a buckshot or a bucky. And because he carried this bucky and he killed people with a bucky, we call him Bucky Marshall. So that's how he got the name Bucky Marshall, because it's mostly a pump action shotgun he walks with and he used to in the crimes he committed and the lives that he took. Now, these three men, Burry Boy, Feathermap, and Bucky Marshall, the Prime Minister himself, Michael Manley, he used those men in three specific constituencies in order to win and maintain power. Central Kingston, South St. Andrew, and Southwestern St. Andrew. So that was Portia constituency. At the time, Tony Spalding's constituency and Michael Manley's constituency himself, which was Central Kingston. And he used these men to go about and murder and intimidate and do everything in the party's interest to make the PNP what it is today. So we know that there's an association, and Central Kingston never went to the JLP until these people were no longer around. So that was a long history of them. They operated even in other constituencies like Waterhouse and so on, but they mostly specialized in those constituencies, run people out of houses, burn down those houses, bring in people from supporters from their own party, and so on. And the intimidation. These men even went to up to Retirement Road at the JLP headquarters, and about 30 of them all riding on Honda motorcycles, S90 and CB 200, CB 100 at the time, and they ransacked the office, took out typewriters, mashed up whatever they could, and left. So we can see that they were used both for in every sense of intimidation by the PNP in the 60s up well into the 70s. And they were instrumental in ensuring that the PNP maintained a certain level of relevancy at the time over what Edward Seaga was doing. Those three men, Burry Boy, Feathermap, and Bucky Marshall, they were also responsible for chopping up Trevor Monroe. Trevor Monroe got some brutal chops to almost to the point where he died, especially in his head. There were more than a dozen of those wounds in Trevor Monroe's head and all over his body. And those pictures were published in newspaper early in the 70s. I think that when he did that was in 1971. And why did that happen? Why did they lead the group to go down there and do that? That was because at the time there were port workers on the port who were on strike. And when they were down there on strike, the union who was in charge of it at the time was the NWU, and the NWU, of course, was aligned to the PNP, National Workers Union. Now, Trevor Monroe went there, and he had his new party, his new union, which was the UAW, and he went down there to try to get the party, the union delegates and the striking workers to switch from the NW to the UAW, which was Trevor Monroe's union. And because he went down and tried to agitate, because he didn't see, the workers felt that there was some coercion between the NW and the people running the wharf, and they were both in cahoots together to keep the people from getting a good pay deal. UAW tried to step in, and Trevor Monroe as a head down there, and they almost killed him. So you can see what I'm saying. This is how political party and gunmen, bloodthirsty gunmen, operated then. And these men were so, what should I say then? These men were so well respected and highly prized that on 2 trips to Cuba, Manley took both Burry Boy, Pedamap, and Bucky Marshall with him to Cuba. Then after these men eventually died out, I can't remember how they died, but I'll do more research and tell you. But after that, in the late 70s, there came up other people in the group. Anthony Tingle, a General Starkey. He was one of those who used to go around as a teenager with Bucky Marshall, Feathermap, and Burry Boy, and he used to wreak havoc on his own. But it's when they actually left the scene that he became one of those men who he had to look at. He Anthony Tingle, known as General Starkey, he became the man to watch. He and one named Tony Welch. And they went into all kind of JLP areas, and they wreaked havoc and helped burn out people and murdered and do what they had to do to keep the party strongholds. In other words, they engaged in ethnic cleansing at the time. And among them were others well-known murderers: Curly Locks, Bam Bam, Coolie Paul, and Fisherman. And they wreaked havoc. And then, of course, after that, there was also another young man who was part of the group, but he was an intelligent one. Kenneth Skengdan Black. Now, here's the difference between Skengdan now. He was not he was not a hands-on person. He was used, he engaged in the nastiness, But here's the thing with him, he didn't do any of the nastiness himself in the latter stage. He did it when he was just like wetting his foot in the waters. But here's the good thing about him. He was used by the PNP as a go-between. He was the insulation between the evil that the PNP was doing and the dignified hierarchy of the PNP. The PNP would send out the order to Skengdan. Skengdan would pass those orders down, and things get done behind the scenes. And it wouldn't link to the party because Skengdan was that insulation between them, so nobody can link the party specifically to anything that go on. The party hierarchy did not mix with the people who were doing the badness. Skengdan was that insulation and the go-between, and he knew. So Skengdan actually knew where all the bodies are buried for the PNP, and the PNP rewarded him very, very well. He had contracts, multi-million-dollar contracts, all throughout his life. And he still remains, never got on a police blotter, never got on a wanted list or anything. Skengdan Black's company, Black's Brothers, was given a contract of $151 million. Sorry, that was November 2015. A contract was signed with Skengdan Black to build a wall around the National Hero Circle. To this blessed day, we know the one to the $151 million, and the wall is built to an extent, and the wall don't finish yet. $151 took $1 million to build a wall just around the National Heroes Park, and to this blessed day, it can't done, and we can't hear nothing. But that is politics. And that's all. Let's move on to Willie Haggard. Willie Haggard did some of those terrible things back then too. But he and Tony Welch sort of keep themselves undercover. And most people didn't hear about those two. You hear more about more about Tony Welch. Very few persons heard of Willie Haggard, which was William Moore was his right name. But them called Haggard. How is he getting named Haggard? And this is curious again. Because he had a hog heart. Because him so wicked, them call him hog heart. By him the heart of a hog. And eventually they were shorten William to Willie and just give him the Haggard, hog heart, and call him Haggard, Haggart. That's how we got William Haggard. So he was Willie Haggard. So he was no decent fellow. And he had so many secrets for Omar Davis, who was the person in the constituency at the time, that he felt all above, all law and order. Police couldn't touch him, nobody couldn't touch him. He was one of those untouchables. But he went a bit too far with Omar Davis, and Omar Davis just had to brush him. The world know how that go.